Hi, this is Christopher Perrin, and welcome to this episode of The Christopher Perrin Show. In this episode, I want to talk about an important pedagogy that is either neglected often or not used sufficiently. It's an ancient pedagogy that's as old as humanity. It's as old as children. The pedagogy that I'm speaking about is a pedagogy of singing. Singing or chanting. Why don't we have our younger students in particular sing virtually everything we want them to learn permanently? That's the question. We don't. And one of the reasons we don't is because of our own educations, the way we were formed. We tend to parent the way we were parented, and we tend to teach the way we were taught. We've become like our teachers. And so, especially when we get tired, we might be attempting and expending a good effort trying to teach in the classical tradition. But when you get tired, you teach the way you were taught, many of us, because we've been formed, because education is formation. So it's hard to unlearn these things that have been deeply formed within us. And using song to help young children learn, if this wasn't your experience as a child, it's going to seem difficult, especially at first, maybe for a while, to use it yourself. And then if you do begin to use singing and chanting as a pedagogy, you likely won't do it sufficiently or well or nearly enough, at least at first. Music. This word, just the word itself, calls forth the essence of what education should be, which is harmonizing the soul in the cosmos, which is already an ordered harmony, in a world that was created by a God who is true, good, and beautiful, and the author of all that's true, good, and beautiful. The word mousikē means muse. The muses were those who inspired, and in the myth of the nine muses, there was a muse for singing, there was a muse for dancing, a muse for poetry. And then we get from this word muse, we get mousikē, which can mean music, but to the Greeks, like say Plato, mousikē also meant education of younger children. There's the word paideia, which is a more general word for enculturation and raising up a child to full maturity. But mousikē was what you would do with those younger children. They were to be harmonized. Their early education was to be a musical education. So why don't we sing? Why don't we move our bodies? Why isn't there rhythm and poetry and harmony built into all that we do in, say, lower school classical education? Here's Plato from the Republic. He says, musical training is a more potent instrument than any other. Now he's thinking about younger children. Because rhythm and harmony find their way into the inward places of the soul. Do you believe that? Because rhythm and harmony find their way into the inward places of the soul on which they mightily fasten, imparting grace and making the soul graceful of him who is rightly educated, or ungraceful if he be ill-educated. Music is formative, and it gives us a taste for harmony that will continue into our later life. And so, for example, there's a muse for astronomy. And if there's a muse for astronomy, it's for younger children. And this isn't really scientific astronomy where we do all of the measurements, measuring the stars and doing the kind of physics study that we do when we study astronomy and so forth. But it's the joyful engagement of the starry night at heaven and naming those constellations and wondering at them and noting the kind of dance that goes on in the sky every night. That would be astronomy as a musical art, as a musical education. This is what Plato is getting at. So the student learns to love the stars, recite poems about the stars, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, How I Wonder What You Are, etc. And then that love for the night sky and the movement of the constellations and stars gets carried forward through all of her education. So when she begins the scientific study of astronomy, it's founded in and propelled by love and wonder. This is one reason why we should be singing and doing musical education. Now, to quote Augustine in one of his expositions on the Psalms, Psalm 32, he says, "Only the lover sings." We sing out of joy and love. Isn't this true of you when you find yourself humming, walking through the house, even when you're doing work? Singing is a sign that there's a kind of harmony in the world that you want to extol and note. And it's a very mysterious but human response. We sing when we love. So the implication here for education is that if we can put something lovely in front of students that they should know, something that's true, good, or beautiful, it would be worth singing about. And what's interesting as well is if we sing it, it goes deeper into us and it actually aids memory. So there's maybe a practical aspect to this pedagogy. It makes learning more likely to be permanent. So why don't we sing with our students? And then here's a passage from Deuteronomy 31 for those of you in the Jewish or Christian tradition. "Now write down this song and teach it to the Israelites, and have them sing it, so that it may be a witness for me." So in the Christian and Jewish tradition, there's song. Paul writes in Ephesians that we're to break into psalms and spiritual songs. It's the right response to the goodness of God and the redemption and salvation that come through Christ. We want to respond by singing. And this is the response of Miriam after the crossing of the Red Sea, etc. The horse and rider have been thrown into the sea. And so we sing. And here's a definition of this pedagogy of singing or chanting and using jingles. And it comes from chapter 4 of a book that's coming out that I wrote with Carrie Eben called The Good Teacher, 10 key pedagogies that will transform your teaching. Here's the definition of singing and chanting. We sing when we love, and we remember what we love and sing. Children up to about age 12 enjoy singing and chanting ideas and facts that they have come to know and treasure. Regular singing and chanting delights students. It employs their bodies, voices, sight, and hearing, and it deepens learning, making it permanent. Now, we say here up to 12, but actually you can sing with students up to 82. Singing is still a good pedagogy at any age, and we encourage educators to use it all the way through graduation. But it's clear from experience that younger students take to this like a duck to water. They want to sing. Sometimes you'll ask your 17-year-old to sing something because it's a good pedagogy for making learning permanent, but they might not as joyfully and as exuberantly and as self-consciously just burst into song like your 9 and 10-year-olds will. So this is what Dorothy Sayers would call teaching with the grain. Younger students want to learn this way. And they want to sing and chant important information and ideas, historical events, biblical events, scripture, poetry. They want to, and they want to do it far more than you as an adult think is appropriate. In other words, I've just seen this happen over and over again. We're no longer children, and sometimes we forget. And so to be a good teacher, sometimes we have to remember what it means to be a student at the age of the students we are teaching. This is important. But these young students, the 9 and 10-year-olds, they will sing a lot. And I think one of the reasons they want to sing so much is because they maybe subconsciously and innately know that if they can keep singing these things, they will possess them forever. So who would want to deny them the permanent possession of something true, good, and beautiful? Oh, but we adults, no longer being children, being forgetful of what it means to be a child and loving to sing, and maybe having been taught in a different way and being formed by our teachers, we don't sing and chant with our students nearly enough. And when I was doing faculty training, I remember in visiting schools, I would often see this. I'd go through a lower school or a grammar school, and these were all classical schools that agreed that this was a good pedagogy. But I'd walk through the halls of the lower school and just would not hear regular singing and chanting. And I would often discover, well, we do have a history song for this, and we do sing this poem, and we have a song for the water cycle, but we do that on Mondays. Well, the students want more, and they want more because they want, in my view, to possess it. And so I think probably, and this is not a scientific estimate, but I think we probably need to be singing about 5 times more than we think is appropriate as an adult. But the singing and chanting can be worked right into a lesson at the beginning, the middle, and the end. There's lots of most of these songs are not very long. These chants are not very long, so they can be done regularly without really taking too much instruction time for other things. When students are lining up and going out to recess or coming in from lunch, or when the various transitions at beginning of class, the end of class, morning assemblies when you can have the students review and sing through their corpus of songs and chants about important, good, true, and beautiful things, so that even the 6th graders with the second graders are reciting poems and songs and chants that they learned when they were in 2nd grade, reviewing them in assembly. All of this is very good. So you can tell where I'm going. I want to encourage you to sing with your students. And there's, of course, some practical matters. You might think, well, I'm not really good at writing songs. That's not my training. You work with your colleagues. You work with parents. You gather songs and chants that have been created by other people. Some are published with curricula. The company I work with, Classical Academic Press, we produce songs and chants that come with our curricula. But you can create your own, and sometimes those are the best because they kind of have organically come out of your own community. So I'll close with just a story that will maybe remind some of you of the importance of singing and chanting. This is when my daughter was, I think, in 1st grade, and we were at a picnic, and there was a pastor there, and he knew that my daughter Zoe was going to this classical school, and he was wanting to know more about it, and he was curious, and so he was off to the side talking to my daughter, maybe 6 or 7 feet away, but I could hear the conversation, and he said, "Oh, Zoe, are you learning about the Bible?" And she said, "Oh, yes, we're learning about the Bible. In fact, I know all the books of the Bible. Do you know all the books of the Bible?" And the pastor was just silent for a moment, trying to think through what the import of this question was. And then Zoe just volunteered, "Would you like to hear them?" And he said, "Sure." So then she broke into song, happy song. She loved this song. And it went something like this: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd. And she sang through the Old Testament. And then there's a New Testament song. Some of you maybe have heard this. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Romans 1, 2, 1st and 2nd Corinthians. I still have some of this in my head just from hearing it in the car line. And so she went through all the books of the Bible. And then she said to him, if I recall, "Do you know all the 12 sons of Jacob?" And again, he knew not to volunteer an answer. And so she sang, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. These are the 12 sons of Jacob. Hey. She, as a 1st grader, just delighted in this and delighted in sharing it. And to this day, that information is deep in my now 33-year-old daughter's heart and soul and mind. And we could go on, not just books of the Bible, not just the 12 sons of Jacob, not just scripture passages, but poetry, of course, songs and psalms that were sung, but history songs, and I mentioned the water cycle, scientific information that's important, biblical events, anything that was important. The rules of grammar. A sentence is complete when 5 simple rules. It meets. It has a subject, and a verb. It makes sense with every word. Had a capital letter and an N mark too. That's what a sentence is all about for you. I remember this because of being in the car line again, hearing the children in my car singing the chants that they were learning. Latin vocabulary. Vigilo, vigilare, vigilavi, vigilatum. I watch to watch, I watch. Puella, girl, porta, gate, etc. They learn Latin vocabulary. They learn scientific principles. They learn historical events, all through songs and chants. And they loved it. And I can say that my daughter, who is 33, still does. I remember an instance when she was in college, and she sent me an email saying, "Dad, you won't believe this, but I was taking my Roman history examination, and I was asked to list some events and emperors, and I just started singing back in my head the song I learned in 3rd grade and pulled out the information that was needed for the test." So it is of practical value, but it's also something that students enjoy and love. So sing, because the lover will sing, and because music brings harmony, and because this pedagogy brings permanent learning. I hope this has been helpful to you. You can learn more about this pedagogy by, of course, getting the book, The Good Teacher, when it comes out in the spring of 2025, and also by taking a look at a course online at classicalu.com, where my co-author and I, Carrie Eben, have recorded a course that goes through all 10 of these principles. As ever, thank you for watching or viewing. I appreciate your kind attention. I'd like to thank you for watching or listening to the Christopher Perrin Show. And to do that, I can give you a coupon code that will give you 10% off on anything that you might care to order at classicalacademicpress.com. And the coupon code is simply CP Show. Thanks again for listening or watching.